Just because you have a setup and everything's clear, you see it, you want to execute the trade, doesn't mean that it's an A+ setup, even if it looks like it. Why? Because you have to pay attention to risk reward. Risk reward is something that's very important, and we go into it, but not all the way into the details. And now I'm bringing this topic up because a loyal subscriber commented on one of the community boards for us saying that he wanted us to go in more details of how we use risk reward to determine a good trade. It made me think for a little while, that's a really good point, because more times than not, when I'm trading live on Twitch, I'll see a setup. I want to execute it, but the risk reward might not be there, even though the setup looks beautiful. Everything's lining up. We got confluence. We've talked about that tons of times in other videos. Go check those out. But once I had the confluence, I used to make a mistake, and sometimes I still do, where I'll just jump in the trade because it looks beautiful. It's an A+ setup. It has news. It has volume. There's a setup there in place. Maybe it's an ascending triangle. And it's gearing up with a tight entry point. But then I get blindsided and just jump in. And maybe it doesn't work out well. And I scratch my head, why? Why didn't it work? And after reviewing multiple trades of my own, I started to realize that I do recognize risk reward more times than not, but I make mistakes just like anyone else where sometimes I ignore it. And I don't even see it because I just see a great setup that I'm like, I gotta be part of this, especially when we're in a dry season.
I don't need it. I need it!
Right? You know what I'm talking about. When you're just sitting there and you're like, holy crap, nothing's working, nothing's showing up, and then you finally get something. That's when that mistake is easy to creep in. And so whenever I see a great setup, what I need to do right away to make sure that it's a great setup is look at the risk reward. Because what if I see an amazing setup, I get in and there's like major resistance just 20 cents away and my risk happens to be 20 cents. And if I don't see that and actually recognize and acknowledge it, it's one thing to see it, but it's one other thing to acknowledge it, right? Maybe you see it, but when you're in the moment, you're just like, all right, cool, it's a good setup. Bah. You type in your plan because you're doing the right thing, write in your journal, blah, blah, blah. But then you recognize after the fact, for perfect execution, I may make 1-to-1, but no one's perfect. And I need to focus on this here on the risk reward, because you might be scratching your head like, okay, it makes sense. I need 3-to-1, 2-to-1. I get it. No, you don't. You don't understand what I'm trying to say right now. And I'm going to be a little bit more clear. When it comes to risk reward, the reason you don't just want 1-to-1 is because that means if you execute 100%,
perfect,
nail the top, nail the bottom, you made 1-to-1. But ask yourself, how often have you nailed something perfect? How often have you went back and said, oh, I could have had a better entry? Or man, I could have exited higher. Or I should have exited sooner. How often does that happen? I'm telling you, if you're a trader, if you're a real trader, it happens every day. So with that being said, the reason I'm starting to see more and more as my journey continues to grow is the fact that risk reward, the reason I want 2-to-1, 3-to-1, is because if it's a 3-to-1 risk reward and I get in at a good price and I'm risking 10 cents to make 30 as an easy example, if I execute it perfectly, I'll make 30 cents, right? But if I don't, which I normally will not, and sometimes stocks don't even move, right? Sometimes stocks don't even move all the way to the key area. So there's that in play. We didn't even talk about that. Then maybe I'll make 2-to-1. Maybe I'll make 1-to-1. That's what it means about the meat of the move, right? Don't just focus on that one area and be like, I gotta get there. Now, I know a long time ago I talked about how I just focused on 3-to-1 only, but it was 3-to-1 minimum. So I was looking at 5-to-1 risk reward trades, and I would get a tight entry and wait for at least 3-to-1 to take profits and let it ride for 5-to-1. The biggest thing is if you're looking for 3-to-1 risk reward, then you better be looking for a 3.5, 4-to-1 trade, because the chances of you executing it perfectly is very low. And then not to mention what I mentioned earlier, you don't know, I don't know, the guy you're paying $200 a month for doesn't know where a stock is gonna go. And just because your price target is X doesn't mean the stock, it could just move 1R up in your direction and then fail. So that's the other factor you have to factor in. So if you see a great setup next time, right? You see a good setup, it is an ascending triangle. It's forming near a key breakout on the daily, and there's massive volume compared to previous days. You're salivating. You're like, all right, I'm getting ready. Like you're ready. You're putting your $2 price in, ready to press buy because the $2 is a breakout. And you're like, okay, before I do this, what's the risk reward? Even though a daily breakout majorly can run, is there any resistance nearby? What am I have to risk to make that? And if for some reason $2 is the break, but it kind of just like spiked pretty quickly there, you have to maybe reasonably risk $1.50. So it's 50 cents risk, maybe. I don't know the chart you're looking at, but you do. And you're like, if I gotta risk 50 cents, then is it worth buying the $2 break for it to maybe go? I mean, it could run, but maybe there's resistance at 250. So that's a poor risk reward. Why not wait in that scenario for it to break, confirm, and now you have an area of risk that's confirmed, that's maybe tighter, and now your risk reward is increased, which means your setup has increased, which means now it's an A++ setup. Williamson, thank you for bringing this topic up because it's something that I talk about when I trade live on Twitch, but something that I didn't really make a video on. And this is something that is so important. So the next time you're placing a trade, you need to look at risk reward and not just say that, oh, risk reward is there, 3-to-1, 2-to-1, I got to get in. But you got to calculate, if I execute this perfectly, I'll get that. But more times than not, you don't. So give yourself some leeway. Give yourself that little idea that I may get halfway, so at least I can make X. That will give you an indication of how strong this setup is. Is it really an A++? Is it really just a C, a B? Maybe a great setup that looks amazing. It looks great. You really press that buy button, but instead you're gonna hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you're notified the next time we make a video like this. But what happens is now you'll wait and say, the risk reward's not there, I'm gonna wait.